MRA has been known for making these. This is the X-Screen. There's two versions. There's a Sport and a Tour, and the concept is pretty simple. These clamp onto the front of your standard stock windscreen and help redirect the airflow to make you more comfortable. How do they do that? Through reduced noise and wind turbulence, both of which contribute to fatigue on the road, as any touring rider will tell you. Now, MRA also builds bike-specific windscreens with this blade as part of the assembly, although it stands proud of the main element all the time. Now, this is something new. This is the Multi-X-Creen. It's the same concept, that is to have an adjustable blade that allows you to set aerodynamics just for your sitting height and your helmet choice. But the Multi also allows you to run the blade in the fully flush position, that is in line with the rest of the screen. So why would you bother if you're going to leave the deflector flush? Because different helmets might be sensitive to turbulence in different ways. You also might want to adjust the settings to accommodate a passenger, or you might even think about changing the screen a little bit if you're going to use the BMW's adjustable seat in the other position. All of these things might require a change of blade angle, different from the change of the rake of the windscreen itself. You can very easily do this on this screen. Okay, we've been out riding with the Multi-X-Creen and have some good data to back up the perception that it's quieter and less turbulent than the stock part. Before we get to that, let's walk through the installation. So let's back up a step and start by taking the stock windscreen off this GS to put the MRA on. It's actually a fairly straightforward process. A few things you can do to make life a little bit easier for yourself. First of all, run it to the all the way up position. A couple of screws back here are a little bit hard to get to, so we want to get as much room as we can. Now, next thing we're going to do is remove this little deflector. This probably isn't necessary if you have the right set of tools, but it's a lot easier to work behind the screen when you pull this little piece of plastic off. So we're going to take these two screws out. Always drop your hardware because it's easier to find on the carpet. All right, so we got this off. Bear in mind the screw that came out of there is a shouldered screw. See the shoulder? Don't get it mixed up. It's actually the same size as the two that you're going to pull out of the windshield, but this has to be the shouldered one because it goes through plastic on the front. All right, so we got the last screw out on the top. We'll pull the plastic out. That'll free the windshield. Last thing we need to do is we're going to reuse the stock grommets from the BMW windscreen. So we'll peel those out carefully and I'll prepare to install those on the new MRA piece. Fortunately, this is a pretty new motorcycle, so the rubber is nice and pliable, goes in there. Make sure you got both sides clear. We're good to go. All right, now we have the grommets back in, so we're ready to reinstall it. Before you do that, if you've been riding your bike for a while, take this opportunity when the screen's off to clean up in here. This is hard to get to. Lots of nooks and crannies on the GS, so do it now. You or your wife or somebody will make you be a lot happier about that. All right, so now let's go ahead and install it. Line it up to where it should go. Grab the correct piece. Drop it into the grommet, just like that. Grab your first screw and get her started. All right, so we're going to put the top two in first. We'll get this other one so it holds the windshield in place, and then we'll go fight with the bottom two. All right, that's the last little bit of it. Things installed. Double check the fasteners. Don't want to lose any of those in flight, as it were. And that concludes the installation. Now we're going to suit up, go ride, and get some data. All right, so let's use this as our baseline. We're on the stock windscreen for the BMW GS in the low position, cruising along at 60 miles an hour. Pretty calm day. This is actually pretty good aerodynamics for a stock bike. I think BMW did a really nice job on this. Feels relatively quiet, relatively low turbulence. Actually a pretty comfortable place to be. A good friend of mine once said if you can't do 1,000 miles a day on a GS, you probably shouldn't be riding a motorcycle. This kind of experience makes me tend to agree. With the windscreen in the upper position, it gets very slightly quieter. The perception is that it does get quieter. You get a little bit more coverage. I can definitely feel the wind hitting higher up on my helmet. And it's slightly more turbulent. That's kind of the expectation is you put a bit of more of a barn door out there, you kind of do expect that you're going to get a little more turbulence out of it. It's definitely more turbulence than in the lower position, but you would expect that to get the additional coverage. So this, by comparison, is the MRA Multi-X-Creen on the GS. Of course, the big difference is the in-plane little tab that allows you to fine-tune adjustments. So right now, I'm going to set the cruise control for 60 miles an hour. And I'm running the MRA right now in the lower position. And it's actually pretty good. The wind is hitting me just above sort of mid-visor. but it's actually very smooth. Very little turbulence, very little head rock. So that's the MRA in the low position. I'm going to go ahead and crank it up. This is the same setup, just with the windscreen in the upper position. This is noticeably quieter, yet still smooth. And one of the things about the MRA with this little blade is sometimes with the stock windscreen, as you get the rake up like this, it can get a little bit turbulent as the air starts to spill off the top edge of the windscreen. But because this little blade is helping to create a slot gap, keep the air as smooth or as laminar as possible, it's actually very effectively quiet. So that's the ride behind the MRA X-Screen. It's a big improvement over the stock BMW screen in terms of noise and turbulence, and it's measurable and perceived. It's a really nice improvement on a kind of an evergreen product for MRA. So that's an overview of the MRA Multi-X-Screen compared to the BMW stock screen. It's actually a very, very nice unit. Gives you a little bit more coverage, really quiet, really low turbulence. We have these in stock now for the R1200GS. Come visit us at TwistedThrottle.com.